Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new Mattel Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous set that has just released. This time we have the Darius and Brachiosaurus set. This is the second variant of the Brachiosaurus to get released. It seems as though Darius is probably the exact same figure we've had every time. I don't know why they haven't released some alternate variant of Darius, but we just continue to get that same yellow jacket version with every release. Fingers crossed at some point in the future they'll give us a different version, at least with one of these, sets that they keep continuously releasing Darius in. But at this point, I think I probably have about 3 or 4 Darius figures because he's been released so many times. But the Brachiosaurus is a very nice greenish colored version, very different than the initial one, and I think it actually looks far better than I expected it to. I had seen some images of other people's and stuff online, and at first, I didn't think it looked all that great, but having it here in hand, it looks far better than I thought it would. We also have a Velociraptor resonating chamber and some Jurassic Park kind of binoculars right there, which are really cool. And then as far as the actual packaging and everything, you can see it's just your standard Dino Escape Camp Cretaceous packaging. And then here on the back, we have an image there of Darius holding up the binoculars as well as the resonating chamber. And we also have a nice image of the Brachiosaurus. We have an image down here that shows off the other 2 sets that are in this kind of story pack wave with Brooklyn and the Monolophosaurus, as well as Sammy and the Velociraptor down there. So let's go ahead, pop this out of the packaging, and take a look at it up close right now. Bringing Darius in, again, you can see that it is the exact same figure. Like, there is no differences that I can tell as far as this release over the previous releases. And since we have reviewed Darius in the past, we really don't need to review him again, especially since this is, again, numerous times now that we've had him here on the channel. Of course, it's a fantastic figure of Darius, but since he's nothing new, again, we really can just skip over him. But as far as his extras go, we have the Velociraptor resonating chamber, which we have actually also reviewed this in the past as well here on the channel. I can't off the top of my head quite recall what set the resonating chamber came in, but I definitely can remember us getting one at some point. It is a beautiful interpretation of that kind of Jurassic Park 3 Velociraptor resonating chamber, and a very cool addition to any set that Mattel decides to add this into, something that honestly I never would have expected them to have created when the Jurassic line started. So it's a very cool welcome addition to any set, even though we have already had that. But then we have the binoculars, and as far as I can recall, we haven't had binoculars previously. Now, I could be wrong, I may just not be remembering them, but I don't remember us having these binoculars in the past. And you can see they sport those kind of classic Jurassic Park sort of colors. I don't remember if these were actually, this color scheme and this appearance or anything in Camp Cretaceous. Being a Camp Cretaceous release, I wouldn't be surprised if they were, but they, again, it might be something I just forget. But regardless, they look pretty cool. Nothing absolutely incredible, but a pretty fun little addition to the set are the binoculars. And then the star, in my opinion, of this set would be the Brachiosaurus. And the Brachiosaurus looks really nice in these greenish tones. Not always a huge fan of sauropods with greenish tones of color, but this actually turned out far nicer than I expected it to. And something with certain dinosaurs in the line, I don't know what it is, but Mattel will release certain dinosaurs where they always get nice paint schemes that I like. Like the Monolophosaurus is one that every single time they've released it, I've enjoyed the paint scheme of it. And I think the Brachiosaurus might end up following in that same trend, because now the very first Brachiosaurus I felt like was phenomenal, and this second variant of the Brachiosaurus, in my opinion, is also pretty close to as nice as the first one. It's not far off, and although it's not all that many different tones of color, it is still really nice and naturally applied, and just in general I think looks better than a lot of the Mattel figures do. So for the figure, of course, we have reviewed the actual sculpt in the past, so we only really need to take a look at what's different on this one compared to previous releases, and that would be the paint job. So you can see here we have a nice greenish tone of color for the majority of the body, a nice light green, but there's like this really nice light blue speckling that's been applied, and it's super abundant on this figure. Like, it's actually quite subtle with the way it's applied. You almost don't even pick up on it until you really start looking for it. And I think that it's really nice the way that they've done it on this one, because it honestly makes it look like the figure has color variation, like kind of realistic skin tone throughout the entire course of the figure, because there's just these alternate areas of color where you can see it kind of transition back and forth between little tiny blue speckles and splotches and then the green. So it's very, very appealing to the eye, I think. We also have a nice black eye up here in the face. Of course, it's been given a nice gloss coat, shines very realistically like an eye would, and they're both placed pretty nicely for the most part that I can tell. We do have an articulated jaw. We have kind of a light off-white there for the lower jaw. Inside the mouth, the teeth are painted, and they are painted beautifully. Like, let's get a nice view of that. Look at that. Very, very carefully, very precise paintwork on those teeth. The teeth on the lower jaw kind of blend in with the coloration of the lower jaw being so similar in tone of color, but they stand out a lot more on the upper jaw, so you can really see how nice and precise the paintwork of all of the teeth are up there on the upper jaw. You also see a really nice pinkish tone of color for the inside of the mouth, as well as a very nice looking gloss coat. You can see the pinkish tone runs all the way up there onto the upper jaw as well on the inside of the mouth. Absolutely gorgeous paintwork on the inside of the mouth of the Brachiosaurus. And then there's also this really nice light coloration here in the throat. Like you can see we have an off-white here, but once it transitions down here into the throat, it's like a very light green bordering on a yellow. And you can see that that runs down throughout the course of the figure all the way down here to like the little past the chest region of the Brachiosaurus before it tapers off. I, of course, would have really liked to have seen it run the entire course of the underside, but the figure honestly looks so good, even with it stopping there, that I don't mind that it does stop there. There's the Jurassic Facts app code before I pass it by and forget about it, just in case you wanted to add it to your collection. But we also, again, here on the upper side, have a very nice dark green that picks up about mid-area of the head, maybe a little past the mid-area of the head, and then it runs down the course of the back all the way out here around the hip region before tapering off, and then we transition back to that light green. But again, the speckles of the blue speckles, looks really good as far as the coloration goes. I think even with the green ending so abruptly, it still looks really nice, even with the missing paint there out onto the tails. So a really nice looking Brachiosaurus. Of course, it suffers from your usual Mattel paint job downsides, like a lack of paint on the nails, no paint really out onto the tail as far as that alternate color up here, but the blue speckling that's just so subtle with the way it's added, and the really nice tones of color used throughout the course of the Brachiosaurus, I think, make up for that, and really has given us a fantastic second version of the baby Brachiosaurus. As far as articulation goes on Darius, it's your standard. You have the really nice shoulder articulation. It can come out away from the body. It can completely swivel if you would like. We also have elbow articulation, so some pretty nice articulation in the arms. We do have head articulation, which I almost missed. We can go ahead and swivel that as well. Same deal as far as both sides. Again, it can move all over the place as far as the articulation goes. We do have articulation here in the midsection. Again, we can completely swivel and break his spine if we choose to. We also have articulation in the hip region as well as the knee. So some pretty nice articulation on Darius. I believe that's everything articulation-wise on him. And then as far as the baby Brachiosaurus, we, again, like we've already seen, have articulation in the lower jaw. We also have articulation in the neck, which works very smoothly, can drop pretty low to the ground there. And it is unfortunate to see that the dark green can't, really run through, because we have the green here, the lighter green, running up, but once you actually pull that down, you can see how the dark green ends. It does run the course of this little seam here, but just there's no real way to make this whole thing look smooth as far as that green continuing in this area, I think, due to the way that it articulates. But we also have articulation in the front leg, which can go forward and back quite far, and then articulation in the rear leg, forward and back quite far. Doesn't go out away from the body now. And then we also have a swivel tail. So lots of really fun articulation for both the Brachiosaurus and Darius. As far as a size goes, for Darius, he's going to fall right in the same size range as most of these kid versions of the Jurassic World figures. You're looking at a little under 3.5 inches, or around the 8.5 centimeter mark. For the Brachiosaurus, he's just shy of 5 inches, so I'd say about 4.75 inches, or around the 12 centimeter mark. And then for a length, if we have the head up high, of course he'd be, a little longer if we put the head out further, but at this point you're looking at about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Darius and Brachiosaurus set. And you can see that specifically like with Darius and Muldoon, they size up very nicely to show off the fact that Darius is a child, Muldoon is obviously an adult. And the Brachiosaurus, being, that attack pack, wild pack size range, still sports a pretty impressive size, and you can definitely see that here in comparison to the Colovosaurus. So perfectly sized, I would say, for both of these figures. And then, although it's not the best comparison, for a second comparison with the Brachiosaurus, here is the newer version in comparison to the older one. I don't know where exactly in my massive collection of figures I have put the older Brachiosaurus, so I couldn't pull the out-of-box version out to show you guys, but here is an in-box version, again, in comparison to the newer one. I love the fact that we have numerous color variants already of this, kind of helping to create a very nice Brachiosaurus family. So this brand new Darius and Baby Brachiosaurus set, maybe not the best release because there's nothing brand new sculpt-wise or species-wise or anything, but definitely another fun set if you ask me. The Darius figure at this point definitely is getting boring. We've had too many of the same figure. We really need a different variant, a different, at least maybe like a jacketless version or like a kind of a weathered version when he's been on the island for a while, similar to how Ben was all dirty and everything. We should get something like that for Darius, but unfortunately we just have the same reused figure again for this set. Still a great figure, just something we've had already way too many times. We have a very cool resonating chamber and binoculars. The resonating chamber we have had in the past. I don't recall if we've had the binoculars, but both are really cool minor additions to any set. It doesn't bother me when we get a repeat as far as something like that goes, and I think both are definitely very nice additions to this set. And then we have the Brachiosaurus, and the Brachiosaurus is, of course, like I had stated earlier, the star of the show, and in my opinion is very, very close to, if not just as nice as the initial Brachiosaurus release. Obviously not quite following that same color scheme that you would normally see on a Jurassic Park style Brachiosaurus with a nice brighter green to this one, but still looking nice and natural for the most part. All of the paint application is really beautifully applied, and the kind of speckling and everything that we have on this one just gives it so much more of a visually appealing appearance, I think, than most Mattel figures. I wish they'd actually do that with every figure they release, where they would just give it like a really strong abundance of that kind of speckling, because it just makes the skin tone look so much more lifelike and realistic. Of course, there's always, like I said earlier as well, room for improvement because we don't have nail paint, and the darker green running out onto the tail, as well as the lighter coloration running along the underside a little further, would have helped the overall appearance of it. But even without that stuff, I still feel like the Brachiosaurus is really nice looking and has definitely exceeded my expectations quite far as what I was expecting with this one. I just didn't think it would be as nice as it is, but it's a pleasant surprise and much nicer than I thought it would be. Regardless, again, two really cool figures and some fun extras. Definitely a set worth picking up if you can encounter it. I don't know if Amazon is going to stock this again or not. I have no idea, but I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed and hoping that maybe they will at some point. Regardless, it's a set that if you can find, it's definitely worth picking up. I will include a link in the description to the Amazon listing where it was for sale and maybe will pop up again at some point. So make sure if you can find this, you pick it up, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.